Welcome back to Just One Question, which is increasingly more than one, but Richard Newman is my guest. I'm really excited to welcome him to the program, and I'm sure, because I know his antecedents, that he is perfectly capable of handling more than one question if that should happen. Richard Newman is a fellow co-conspirator of mine in the sense that we both work on communications. He's written 2 books on communications, and he's going to tell us about his latest, I suspect. But the thing that kicked Richard's career into high gear was going to northern India and teaching English, or trying to teach English, to the Tibetan refugees there. So that's the best origin story after Superman and Kryptonite that I've heard in a long time. So welcome, Richard. How the heck are you?
I'm really good. Yeah, thank you. It's good to talk to you, Nick. And it's great to talk with somebody who's got the same sort of passion for communication that I've got too. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, real pleasure. And let's just jump right in. And as I say, I reserve the right to ask follow-up questions, but this is just one question. And the question is, technology plays an increasing role in our lives and in our work lives. How has it affected you and the work you do in communicating and helping people communicate and making people more charismatic and all the other cool things that you do?
Yeah, it's a really good question to ask in this space, because I think, my team and I have been teaching communication now for 23 years. And I mean, even like I can remember 15 years ago, people starting to say to me, well, what do you think is going to happen with technology coming in? Will people need communication training in the same sort of way? And I always said to people, face-to-face communication is going to be crucial for people no matter what happens. It doesn't matter where we go with technology, being face-to-face and being good at communication in that way is always going to be a skill that people need. And, many years back, people were saying, but, what about virtual training and virtual reality training? And I said, no, face-to-face is the place to go. And so that led me up to, getting towards 2020, it's coming up to sort of 2018. I mentioned this to you just a moment ago. I had this book come out, You Were Born to Speak, and I put in there everything I could think about communication, saying this is how face-to-face communication is done, whether you're speaking to one person or a group, or you're speaking on stage and so on, this is what you need. And then 2020 hit, and suddenly we had the biggest pipeline of work that we'd ever had suddenly disappear. And we had to rely on technology. And, having spent so many years saying to people that this sort of communication coaching is best done in person, we then had to figure out, well, how do we do this with technology? And so we shifted everything online. So we had sort of online learning journeys people could go through by themselves, and then also live virtual trainings we were doing and interactions. And we used software like Mentimeter that people might be familiar with, and WooClap, and everything we can possibly do to engage people. And actually the funny thing with technology at first was we work with London Business School. We train the MBA students there, and we put together this entire learning journey they could go through virtually without us needing to be in their lecture rooms with them. And I remember as part of this, we sent them this homework assignment, which was simply, based on learning all of the strategies from us online, send us a video of you putting them into action. And the first person who sent me one, I thought, wow, I never have to leave the house again. Like, this person is doing everything I would coach them to do in the room. I didn't even have to live teach them. They've done all this. And then we would do like a live review call at the end to see what the journey was like for them. So I suddenly thought, wow, technology is going to be pivotal for us here. But what I didn't anticipate is what then happened the last 3 years, where we went through these lockdowns and people got very excited about virtual communication, and then got a bit weather beaten by it, thinking, actually, I just really need to be with another human being. And what I feel excited by actually at the moment is how people are starting to say, okay, I've done the virtual working for a long time and done that sort of working from home, but I do actually want to be with another human being. And so where last year, I think about 70% of the work that we did as an industry was virtual, only 30% was face-to-face. This year is now the opposite. Now we're doing about 30% virtual and 70% face-to-face. And I'm delighted for that to be happening, because I think there's been a big challenge these last few years, which is what led me to write my second book, which is that clients were coming to us with different needs. They said, look, there's 3 big things that we are struggling with that we've never really thought about before. Could you help us here? And it's because of the technology. So the first big thing that people have been saying was that they now feel so stressed because of the amount of technology that's being involved. And what they meant was that during the pandemic, a lot of people had a challenge where they then had less staff, and they were trying to hit ever increasing targets. And instead of having 2 meetings a day, because they could drive to one client and then drive to another, and that was about it, now they're having 17 meetings per day, because all they've got to do is click from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next. And then on top of that, they've got 300 emails to deal with and everything else that's going on. So technology had led them to this state of massive stress. And we'd been in a place where, in lockdown, you weren't allowed to go and hug your family if they lived in another building. So people had this big state of stress. The second thing that came in is people saying, because of technology, we're having these virtual conversations, but we're not having coffee room conversations, and we're not going to the pub for happy hour for those conversations. And so our relationships are actually much more surface level. So they were coming to us saying, what can you do to get deeper relationships with people, resolving conflicts that were coming up that never would have come up before, and that sort of thing. And then lastly, people were saying to us that a lot of people have really questioned their place in the world based on what's happening in the last few years with the pandemic and politics and the economy, and people just lacking a sense of purpose. And so we started working with our clients on all of these elements to help them past the boundaries that technology, or the overwhelm that technology had brought their way, to get to that place of being able to have those 3 things they needed, which was a really powerful mindset, deeper communication skills to get beyond the surface level, right down to a stronger understanding and better relationships, and thirdly, a true sense of purpose. And that's what led me to my second book, which you kindly mentioned. So I've got Lift Your Impact, which was, what's next? You know how to communicate, but now that we've had this this challenge with technology kind of taking over, how do we now become great communicators? So I've been really pleased to help clients with that worldwide, whether we're doing it virtually or in person, and increasingly, thankfully, in person, helping people get to that place where they can suddenly now be a rock in the storm, and they can go out and have a more positive influence on other people and feel like it's worthwhile, like it's leading them to some sort of greater sense of purpose or legacy they can leave behind them. And so I think it's really important for people to reflect on what technology has given them. I think it's amazing, actually, that the pandemic happened at such a time where, the internet was strong enough that it could handle, maybe 2 people in a household running businesses from their house while they're homeschooling teenagers who want to use the Wi-Fi as well. And then Zoom suddenly coming at the right time, and Microsoft Teams happening. So thank goodness we had the internet, and we had Netflix and all these other parts of technology to help us survive being locked down in our houses. But I think that over-reliance that we suddenly had pulled us away from the stronger personal connections with other human beings that we used to have. And so I'm glad that people are easing away from technology and heading back towards that sense of, what does it mean to connect with another human being?
Wonderful. Yeah, when I wrote my book on virtual communications before the pandemic, nobody wanted to buy it. I said my big finding was every virtual relationship degrades over time, and there's a negativity bias in the very nature of solely virtual communication, technological communication. And so, and back then the solution was easy: just get together every now and then and warm it back up, But during the pandemic, suddenly it wasn't easy. So like you, I celebrate the return to whatever this new normal is. So I can't resist. I could ask you 1,000 follow-up questions and we could talk all day, but I can't resist asking one, which is, our audience loves you to sum it up and to give them one tip and this sort of thing. So warning, the question that's coming is about asking you for one tip. But if, given that you have a hybrid world ahead of you, if you're in the workplace these days, there's still some virtual communication and then some in person, whatever the exact percentage is. Given that's the case, at least for the near future, as far as ahead as we can see, and that's a good thing, because we've got another channel now, another way to communicate. If we think of it rather than privation as an opportunity, then what's the one thing that our listeners and viewers could do to improve the technological communication? So granted, they have the Zoom meetings or the Teams meetings, as you alluded to. What's the one thing they could think about to make that better?
Great. It's a good question. I think the biggest tip we're actually giving people right now, and this is based on listening to our clients worldwide. We've got people, across Europe, the Americas, Middle East, across Asia, Australia, and we keep on talking to people and saying, what's working, what's not, what do you need help with? And the summary of what I've heard from people worldwide that I absolutely agree with is that hybrid meetings are not working for people. So simply put, what people say is it's massively better if you either have an in-person meeting or you have a virtual meeting. If you are doing a hybrid meeting, it makes it worse for everybody who's there. And so, my team have done this where I've been in a lecture theatre for a business school where I've got sort of 250 people in the room and I've got 30 people up on a screen. And I know my attention is split, trying to figure out, okay, where did that comment come from and what are we doing here? We know that it's challenging, even when people have got amazing technology there, is that people are thoroughly preferring either do it virtual or do it in person. And sometimes when we're asked to run training, where I remember I flew out to Seattle to work with a team and some of the people couldn't make it in person and they said, could you have them hybrid and so on? I said, what's better is that another member of my team will work with them virtually and they'll teach them exactly the same content I'll do in the room, but they're going to give it to that person in a way that doesn't distract the people in the room or distract them. It does it in a way that is really going to work. And, I have to say that, it is possible to do something where it's hybrid and gain value. I'm not dismissing it completely, but I think the technology is going to have to go a little bit further before we can truly make that work for everyone and everyone feels delighted by that process happening. Now, having said that, I'll give like an extra tip. You asked me for one tip. I'll give people an extra tip, which is very simply, like if people want to have a little tip on, virtual working is here to stay. And I thought a few years ago when we started teaching, how do you present virtually and so on, we thought, well, people are going to get past the basics and that they're all going to be fine. There's a lot of classic mistakes that we still see people doing. So just to give people a few simple tips on this. So firstly, I talk to people about the height of their camera. Mm-hmm. So many people, they've got a camera that is either like way too low for them or way too high for them, or they find themselves like sort of squished into the bottom part of the screen. And all you're really seeing is a large part of their background or their scenery. And so very simply, we talk to people about the rule of thirds. Be in the middle third, have your eyes 1/3 down from the top of the shot. Anyone watching this video can see myself and Nick are both doing this. And you want to have the camera at eye level. So it should be, if you want to have an eye-to-eye conversation, we'll have the camera on that sort of level rather than being too high or too low. I was having a conversation with someone earlier. I don't know if the camera was on her ceiling or something like that, but I got a nice shot of her floor and so on, which is kind of distracting. So having that eye-to-eye conversation, get it to that place, make sure that you've got a clean background of some sort or sort of non-distracting. A survey that came out recently said that people do not trust virtual backgrounds. And so it's better to have something real. Occasionally people ask me, is mine real? And it is real. Come back and touch it over here. So it is real. So you want to make sure that you feel genuine in that way. And make sure you got lighting coming towards you, not behind you. A lot of people have a window behind them. So make sure that you're doing what you can to make those virtual meetings better. Just turning on a webcam is not enough. If you're going to do a virtual meeting well, do it like you mean it. And then aim to most likely have virtual meetings, virtual, in-person meetings, in person. And that's going to be the best way forward for everybody to get the maximum value from the time they put in.
Love it. Richard Newman, everybody. And advice straight from a pro, a guy who knows how to do it clearly. Thank you so much for being on Just One Question, and great to meet you. And I hope one day we get to share a pint together in a pub somewhere in your beautiful country. So thank you for being on Just One Question.
You're welcome. Thanks.